come to this happy place, welcome.
Please stand clear of the doors. Por favor, manténganse alejados de las
This here's
puertas.
a wild ride in the
When indiscreetly indoors change.
So today on Miles from Main Street, we've got Johnny J from the DMSW Podcast. How are we doing today, Johnny?
Awesome. Thanks for having me, guys. Excited to be here.
So, talking to Johnny, his podcast is more kind of like big picture Disney, kind of like full umbrella Disney, and we love that because we love all things Disney. But we kind of wanted to talk to him about his podcast and what he does and the things that he loves about Disney and kind of how he got pulled into this whole world. So Johnny, tell us a little bit about your podcast.
Sure. All right. So the name of it is the DMSW Podcast. D for Disney, M for Marvel, SW Star Wars. So kind of going with that whole Disney umbrella theme, like you were saying there. And for me, I was a guy that I went to Disney a couple of times growing up with my family, but never really had that like true like passion or like obsession Disney, like super fan status kind of with Disney. I liked it, but it wasn't my number one hobby or my number one focus. When I got married, my wife wanted to go to Disney for our honeymoon, so we did that. But again, even then going as an adult, still just, it didn't click for me. It was a great time. It was a nice place to go on vacation, but didn't have that like connection yet. But then once we started having kids, my wife was kind of getting to that point where she was asking like, hey, can we take the kids to Disney? We got to plan this first Disney trip with the kids. And I was that dad that was, it's so expensive and they're not even going to remember it. Like, we should wait. Like, there's no rush. Like, why do we let's just keep waiting and pushing it off. But we just kept having more and more kids too. We actually have 6 kids all together now. So we get a full boat. But back then, around that time of that first trip, we were up to 4 kids at the time. And my wife was like, listen, if we just keep pushing it off, like eventually the oldest one's going to be too old. And she's like, you got to stop thinking about it as like the kids aren't going to remember it forever. Think about it more so as like, this is for us. Like, it's for us as the parents to just see that magic and all those Disney experiences on the kids' faces. And it's more honestly for us and our enjoyment and our parenting memories than it is the kids remembering it, because they probably won't remember it. They are too little. So I was like, I never thought about it that way. That's a pretty good way about thinking about it. So we finally bit the bullet there and planned for it and saved up and did that first big Disney trip. And one of the first couple of days there, we had stopped. We were having lunch at the Garden Grill, and it was a character lunch. And the meal was kind of wrapping up. The characters had come around. It was all great. Did the autograph books and the pictures and all that stuff. And my wife and 3 of the kids they were done eating, so they left the table and were heading out, getting back like out towards the parks. And one of my twin daughters was kind of hanging behind. She had a couple little bites left, and I waited back with her. And then by the time she was done and we were getting up and heading out, Mickey was kind of coming around the bend there again, right as we were approaching the stairs to leave. And he just kind of stopped her in her tracks and got down on his knee and like gave her that like one-on-one like specific attention, and was like interacting with her. And at one point he even like did the kiss thing, and you hear like sometimes you hear that like kiss sound come out of the Mickey costume, and he gave her one of those, and it was like a Hollywood movie. Like, I watched my daughter's eyes just like sparkle, and like the time slowed down, and like I felt, the example I always give is like I felt like the Grinch, like the camera zoomed in on my heart, and like my little Mickey shaped heart like grew 3 times the size and poof, burst out of that box. And I remember like running out to like catch up with my wife and the other kids, and I was like, Stace, everything just changed. Like, that is the exact moment that I became like a legit like Disney obsessed super fan. Like, that moment is something I will remember forever for the rest of my life. Like, that it literally changed me in that one exact moment. So from that moment on, then I became every vacation I was like, we should go back to Disney. We should go back to Disney again. So I was getting into the YouTube videos and all that kind of stuff. And then eventually we got up to where the pandemic was. And being up here from New England, I'm a big sports fan. That was kind of my number one hobby, was fantasy football, and watching games with my buddies, and we'd go to the bar or go to somebody's house. And when the pandemic hit, obviously that changed for everybody. Everyone was clamping down, and never mind going to bars. Like, you were like, I remember back when it first started, like, you weren't even going to each other's houses at the time. So that whole sports landscape changed for me, and my passion for sports just kind of faded over time. And I had not driving to work every day. I wasn't listening to sports radio in the car anymore, so I was looking for a new form of entertainment and had an opening for a new hobby. So started getting into listening to podcasts, and eventually I was like, oh, I wonder if there's podcasts on Disney. There seems to be podcasts on everything else. And it was like, search Disney for the first time in a podcasting app, and like again, like brain explode moment. I was like, couldn't believe how many options were out there in the Disney community. So just found my favorite ones and started getting into it. And I kind of levitated towards this one show with these three dads that all live in the same neighborhood together. And they were big Disney fans. And every time they'd get together for their kids playing or doing sports or something, they'd end up just talking Disney. And eventually they were like, oh, we should just buy a microphone and turn it on. And when we're having these Disney conversations, make a podcast out of it. And their show kind of took off. And during the pandemic, it was like perfect timing for them. And just listening week after week, and then like going back and catching up on all the episodes, like eventually got to a point for me where I was like, I felt like the kid like missing out on like the cool kids party. I'm like, man, I got to get into this. Like, how do I get in and do what they're doing in there? So started doing all my research, looking at YouTube videos on microphones and recording softwares and all that kind of stuff. And eventually over time, I made the leap and got into it. And here I am talking to you guys.
That's pretty awesome. You know, when you were talking about Mickey and your daughter, like, that's kind of the one thing I always remember too. After the first time I took my kids, was we were watching the Main Street Electrical Parade, and I had both kids on a knee, and you know, like sitting in front and having the characters in the parade coming over and interacting with them. Like, that's the biggest memory that I have that I keep going back to. So it's amazing what those kids will do to us.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, it feels like you're in a TV show or a movie. Like, it just, time slows down, and like your heart just melts. It's just incredible. Some of the best parenting memories I have are with the kids in Disney. It's awesome.
That's beautiful. I don't think I have a moment where, I mean, I guess I kind of do. But yeah, my Disney fandom, I mean, I came from a family who went to Disney a lot. And so, I mean, I was always just kind of around it. And I guess I just kind of like slowly moved towards Disney. And then all of a sudden I was like, wait a minute. I think I really like this stuff. So I think I didn't really have the one moment. I would have to say my one moment I realized I was really into Disney was probably Illuminations at Epcot back in the day. Just like listening to that music and being like, this music is pretty awesome. Disney's pretty cool. Yeah. But I mean, even at that point, I had already been pretty into Disney. Like, I had been watching YouTube videos and stuff like that, and listening to like people like the Diz and stuff like that. So, I mean, I don't know. I think that's really cool, like having a moment, like, you know, your exact moment where like everything clicked. So and it's a beautiful story. Like, that it was really beautiful. So.
Thank you. Yeah, sometimes I almost like get jealous of like hearing other adults now. They're like, oh yeah, I went multiple times growing up. I've been a Disney fan since I was 5 years old, and I'm like, oh man, I wish I could have got to go more times growing up. But you know, like they say, everything happens for a reason, and just like you said, like I do like kind of almost in a way now feel cool that like I can just like play it back in my head, like the exact second that was poof, instant like Disney super fan right there.
Yeah, that's real cool. So Disney, Marvel, and Star Wars. I'd have to say, for me, I mean, obviously Disney's a big one. Marvel, for me, it's kind of hard to keep up with all of the Marvel, and I totally understand that that's kind of what's so cool about Marvel, is there's just so much to it. But both Brian and I are pretty big Star Wars fans as well, so.
Awesome.
You're in good company.
Awesome. Yeah, and the reason I kind of designed my show around the three separate topics like that was as I was kind of growing my love for podcasts and finding more and more shows, I was having trouble finding a show that kind of covered all those different aspects of it. Like I'd find a really good Disney World podcast, and then the newest Marvel movie would come out, and like everybody on the planet would be talking about it, and they wouldn't even mention it. I'm like, God, come on, guys! Like I love hearing your takes on rides and hotels and snacks and all this stuff. Like, well, please talk about this Marvel movie. I want to hear your thoughts on it. And like I said, I just had trouble finding the right podcast that was kind of hitting all those different sections. And with Star Wars and Galaxy's Edge taking off, and that getting more and more involved with Disney, I was like, oh, maybe this could be my thing. Maybe when I start my podcast, I'll have a show where I kind of hit all the different topics. So week to week, I try to do a little news segment and kind of give a couple little stories kind of from each one of those three categories. And then the main topic of the episode, I'll kind of pick like a Star Wars topic and review the Obi-Wan series, or kind of rank my favorite live action movies, something like that, but kind of rotate through the different topics week to week. So I'm never just doing all Marvel or all Disney content week or week, trying to mix it up a little bit.
So do you think you're having trouble finding, like, I guess you're not having trouble finding things to talk about with all the Marvel and Star Wars content coming out, but like, is it getting to be too much almost that you can't cover it all?
Yeah, it can. I've run into that a few times where like something's come up and like a big story's happened in Disney, and I'm like, oh, I was gonna do this Marvel thing this week, but this Disney thing is kind of too big to like just ignore and turn and then do my episode on that new Disney thing. But then like before you know it, you're 2 or 3 weeks down the road and you're like, crap, I still haven't gone back and done that one topic. So yeah, there is definitely a lot of stuff going on. And if I like I've tried to plan out the show, and I've already looked like kind of through the calendar of the good thing about Marvel and Star Wars is pretty much they have set release dates on when stuff is coming out. So I've been able to kind of plan out my schedule here months in advance and know, okay, like this is the day the movie comes out, so I need to make sure I talk about it the very next Monday, and this is when the show starts, so I got to count 6 weeks after that. Boom, that's when the show will end. So I got to plan my episode for the show on this date. But yeah, like I said, if something happens in one of the other topics, or something changes in my life and I got to kind of go in another direction, I might not loop it back around. Like I've missed the Ms. Marvel show ended, and I planned to do an episode on that, and then I got swimmer's ear, had that like crazy pain. I actually had to kind of take a week off and skip an episode, and then I came back and went a different direction, did another topic, and now here we are like 3 weeks later, and I'm like, oh man, I don't know if I'm gonna have time to get back and do that. So yeah, it definitely happens here and there.
Well, let's
sure.
talk Ms. Marvel. I got into the second episode and I kind of quit at that point, but what's your overall thought?
I think it was good. It was different. To me, it was clear that they were trying to go in a different direction, and I kind of feel like that's what they've been doing with this whole next phase post Endgame. Is it feels like they're really kind of bringing in different directors and kind of saying, hey, you know what, this is your thing, it's going to be your baby, we're going to get out of your way and just kind of run with it and do whatever you want, and if you want to get a little weird, a little crazy, go for it, and we'll kind of see how it works out. Whereas I enjoyed those first 3 phases of Marvel because I like everything connecting and it all building on each other, and you always feel like it's all connected. And at least for right now, maybe in the early stages of phase 4, it still kind of feels like almost everything's kind of separate and all over the place. So I kind of like that, like Moon Knight was super unique and very different from anything I've ever seen. And like I said, for Miss Marvel, I don't think I was exactly their target audience. It looks like I said, it feels like to me they're definitely kind of going after that younger, like teenage kind of audience, but I think they did a pretty good job. It's to try something that different and that new. I think it's pretty cool, and I don't want to spoiler alert you here if you're only 2 episodes in, but the last couple of seconds of the final episode of the season, there's some special music that they mix in and couple lines that it's like, ooh, it gets the hair standing up on the back of your neck, because that's like the first moment, like you can really be like, okay, this, what we just saw, this could be the next 10, 15 years of Marvel content right here, starting in this moment. And I remember, like, after the show was over, there was an interview with the actress that played Ms. Marvel in the show, and she was like, when they sent me the script that day for what we were going to say and how we were going to end the show. She's like, I emailed Kevin Feige and I was like, are you kidding me? Are you sure you really want me to have this line? So it was cool to see them kind of, like I said, go in a different direction, try something new, but at the same time, like, be willing to give this new character and this new section of Marvel like a pretty important thing to bring into the public. So it was pretty good. It was a good time.
I've been having trouble with Phase 4. Like you said, Moon Knight was good. Hawkeye was good. I haven't seen Thor yet. What was the last movie? Oh, Doctor Strange was good. But like you said, like there's no set direction that it's going.
Yeah, see, for me, I didn't like the Doctor Strange movie because I really liked the WandaVision series, and to me, when I watched the Doctor Strange movie, I was like, all right, perfect. This is going to build off of what they did in WandaVision, and I absolutely loved WandaVision. I'm like, I can't wait to see this. It's the multiverse of madness. Like, we're going to see so many different characters. It's going to just be absolutely bonkers, and I can't wait to see how they bring Vision back into it because Vision's going to have to be there. And then, like, when the movie ended, I was like, what was that? Like, where was the madness? Like, there was like only like three different multiverses that they went to, and I was just like, how do you not bring Vision into that movie? Like, there was such a great storyline that they built between Wanda and Vision in the WandaVision show. I was just like shocked, and it felt like the director and the writer, like, it was almost like they didn't even watch WandaVision. They were just like, oh, well, we know kind of the backstory a little bit on Wanda, so we'll throw her in and we'll make her the bad guy in this movie. She's been through a lot, so we'll just kind of have her snap and go crazy. So for me, at least, I didn't enjoy the Doctor Strange movie, but I can appreciate, like I said, it kind of feels like with like the new Thor movie that it's like a standalone thing. Like, you can almost tell somebody, if you haven't watched all the other Marvel movies, you can jump right in and watch Thor. Like, you don't really need any backstory to kind of really get what's going on. That they even give it to you in the beginning of the movie. They kind of give a little recap of Thor and Jane's kind of backstory. So different direction, but it's been fun.
Yeah, we've just been crazy busy around here, so we haven't had time to go see a movie, but it's definitely on my wife and I's list. And she,
Yep.
You bring up WandaVision. She saw me watching that and started watching it with me, and that's what got her into it. So we went back and watched everything, and
cool.
that kind of started in the middle of all this COVID stuff. So we just finally got caught up recently, and
Very cool.
Like I said, we started Ms. Marvel. I'm not sure if we're gonna go back to it. I mean, you've got me interested now, but I definitely see, like I said, and you said in Phase 4, like, there's no direction, and I feel like the announcements they made at San Diego, like, there's no direction showing up there either. Like, it's all over the place.
It feels like it's just really far off. Like, I think there is like more connectivity and story building coming, but we just haven't got to that point yet. Like, I think the next movie after Wakanda Forever is Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, and that He Who Remains is the bad guy that was in the Loki show. He's supposed to be in this movie, Kang, for the first time, really in a big movie. So I think we're just finally catching up to the point where it's kind of be like, okay, let's start getting the train on the track here and start building towards those two Avengers movies coming in 2025.
Okay, yeah, I think that makes more sense. But they've kind of trained us to find the direction, and now it's kind of like,
right.
I saw a meme a couple weeks ago with somebody like trying to sit there and figure out what they're watching, and it's like, Marvel fan in the year 2035 trying to catch up with 153 movies and 25 television series.
Yep.
I feel like, so I feel bad because I'm over here kind of like, oh, I watched WandaVision, and like that's honestly like the extent of new Marvel that I've watched. I feel bad because I really started to fall off several years ago from Marvel, and then Endgame, or what was the one before Endgame? Infinity
Infinity
War
War
came out, and I saw that, and then Endgame came out, and I was just busy and never ended up watching it, and like people were losing their minds over it, and I was like, maybe
Right.
I should watch this. And so eventually, like, I got around to watching it, but even when I was watching Infinity War, I had missed like a lot of the movies leading up to it. So I think they introduced, or I think they killed off Vision in that in that movie, and I was just kind of like,
Spoiler
who is
alert.
this? Yeah, spoilers, but it's been out for a while. But and I was watching, and I was kind of like, I hadn't seen that movie that he was introduced, so I was like, who's this guy, and why do I care? Obviously, I understand now because I've kind of gone back and figured everything out. But that's the tough thing with Marvel is there's just a lot going on, and you really kind of have to like be on top of it all to like really kind of understand what's going on. But yeah, I kind of feel bad because I'm sitting back here and I'm terrible with new shows. I do the typical Netflix circle where it's like you watch The Office and then you watch Parks and Rec and then you try
Breaking Bad.
something new and then you start watching The Office again. I'm
Yep.
that way with Disney Plus where I'll just like watch all the old Disney movies and stuff like that. That's actually usually what we do. We're very bad at starting new things, but I think that's kind of the shtick of Disney Plus now, where like they're just able to like throw all of these things on it. If it's like Star Wars or Marvel and these like smaller projects, but they build towards like these other like big movies. So I think that's really cool that like these smaller projects do mean something because they're like going to be building into things, and like all of Marvel is now TV shows and movies and stuff like that. Kind of the same thing with Star Wars, where we've got TV shows and movies coming out, and they're all kind of like not really moving towards the same thing, but they're all about the same thing. So I think that's really cool with Disney Plus and all of the content that they're just throwing out there.
Absolutely, and then they can build off each other too. So like a lot of times you'll see a movie and you're like, oh, I kind of like this new character, but I wish I had more backstory on him, or I wish I could have had more of them in the movie. And that, to me, that's the great part about the Disney Plus shows is it gives them the chance to like, okay, let's introduce these new characters or take these kind of fan favorite characters that haven't had a ton of time in the movies and really kind of expand on it and go into their backstory or give them a more important role here and build on it, and then when it's over, slide them into the movie. So
I've liked how they've done that with Star Wars and The Mandalorian in particular. Like they've really started building a world that isn't, relying on a Jedi, and they've brought Luke in a little bit here and there, which has been great for us old folks to see. But it's kind of reviving the entire franchise, and it's nice that they've been. It's great that Jon Favreau came forward to help out because,
absolutely,
after Rise of Skywalker, I was a little bitter, and I'm a Star Wars fan. You give me Star Wars, and I'll just say it's more Star Wars. I don't care. I'm gonna watch it, but I can also relate to the fact that there was an issue after that movie, and thank God Jon Favreau came along because I don't know where we'd be right now.
Yeah, him and Filoni together.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Yes. Filoni's just an amazing guy to listen to. He's always got something, I don't know, saga-wise that'll just like hit you.
Yeah. Yep.
So yeah, like he was saying the Disney Plus show is going to the movies. Well, I'm waiting on those movies yet for Star Wars.
I think there's been rumors that there's a plan for Mando eventually to get a big movie. I think they're saying like they're obviously we've getting into season 3 here eventually on Mando. The Ahsoka stuff is gonna be coming out, and I think like the rumors are saying that like these multiple shows are all gonna eventually Boba Fett stuff too. All these characters will come together and have a massive movie event kind of when these shows are kind of getting to their end point. So could be a little cool nugget at the end of the tunnel there to think about.
That'd be really cool. I know that like Taika Waititi is working on a movie. I have no idea what that's going to be. So
it's probably gonna be some jokes. Gonna be some jokes in it.
They keep talking about, or they did for a while. Kevin Feige was supposed to be doing a Star Wars movie too, but I haven't heard anything on that in a while. So I don't know if you have any ins there, but.
No, same thing as you. I think we've heard the rumor, but I haven't heard anything new since that first initial one. I want him staying right where he's at, though. Don't keep him focused on the Marvel projects. He's got that train rolling on the tracks for me pretty good. Let's keep him right there.
Cool. Well, talked a decent amount about Marvel and Star Wars. Brian and I like to talk about the parks. I think the parks are kind of like where we gravitate to. And it's good to hear that you kind of had your Disney awakening. I thought of that in my head before I said it, and now it sounds not great. Disney awakening. But that's kind of what happened in the parks. That's awesome. So, some basic stuff, kind of like you've already told us like why you go to the parks. You have kids. Right. Do you have a favorite park? Like which one do you enjoy the most?
For me personally, I enjoy Epcot the most. Like that's the more like adult kind of themed park where you can kind of take your time, go around the World Showcase and really kind of focus on the food and just the social aspect of being there with friends or family and just really enjoy it. But when it's kid related stuff, probably I'm just like everybody else, Magic Kingdom and Hollywood Studios, where there's the rides and the more kid kind of oriented stuff is better for the family days at the park. But those very rare chances when I get to be there with my wife or something one-on-one, Epcot's my favorite park.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. And that's a very kind of like Disney parks answer because I always feel like Epcot is such a unique park. It's not. There's definitely IP in it, especially with some of the newer rides that are coming out, like Guardians of the Galaxy. But it's definitely got a lot of that like old school Disney charm, where it was like originally made to be kind of like this like City of Tomorrow, so it still kind of has that feel. And then it's got the countries in the back. I love the countries. I just love walking through all of that area. And this is nothing I've thrown Brian before. This is kind of like a deep thought that I've had about the parks. And since we're talking about Epcot, I'll throw it at you guys. I've had this thought before, and this isn't like a knock on current Disney because we try to be pretty positive on the podcast. But I was thinking about what World Showcase is, like how detailed everything is, and how amazing, like pretty much every country has its own like signature sit down restaurant. If Disney made a World Showcase now, do you think it would be what it is or what it was back in the day when it first came out? Like, do you think they'd be at that level, or was that like an old school Disney, like let's throw everything that we have into this one project?
I don't think it would be.
I think. Go ahead, sorry. We're both waiting. Who's gonna go?
I'll let the guest go first.
Oh, okay. All right. Cool. Thank you. So, I don't think it would be anywhere near as cool as it is if they made it today. I think if they had the chance today, I feel like just in the short time that I've kind of considered myself to be like more that Disney super fan, I feel like I'm kind of watching like the importance meter go from like the the guest experience and the quality of entertainment, and kind of shifting towards the like what's the most profitable, like what's going to make us the most, where we're going to get the most bang for our buck. And I feel like if they redid that today, every single country would be tied exactly to a movie or a character. It would be super heavy on IP. And I'm one who enjoys the IP. When some people complain about, I wish they would kind of cut a lot of that out of the parks, I enjoy it. I like having the movies in the parks kind of crossing paths, but just like you said, there's just that special kind of old school Disney feeling to it, not being so heavily focused on the characters. And I think we'd lose a lot of the things that make Epcot special today if they redid it, because I think it would just be too IP focused.
I wasn't going to go the IP route, but I was going to say that it wouldn't be as robust. The reason they were able to do World Showcase is that they had a sponsor for each country. And, I mean, even down to Morocco being their government sponsoring it, right? So I don't think they can get those kinds of sponsors nowadays. I don't think it would work. And that's a lot of how Disney built all their parks, was on sponsors, and they still have sponsors here and there, but not to the extent that they had it then. And I think that would be a strap on the funding, and it would be more difficult for them to be able to build something that large. You might still get 11 countries. Heck, you could even get 13, but they're not going to be anything like what we have now.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to agree, sadly. And it's not like so much a knock on Disney as kind of like like you said, Johnny, like their focus has been shifted to like what's the best bang for the buck. And it's like I get it. I totally understand that. Like that's like your business. And I feel like they haven't totally abandoned the fans in like doing things that like will get us excited about stuff, but I do think that like if they did try to make a World Showcase in the year 2022, it just wouldn't be what it was. That like that old school Disney, like pulling out all the stops. And maybe a lot of that is just because like they've got so many other projects going on. Like back in the day, it was Disneyland, Magic Kingdom. Okay, what do we do next? And so then they came out with Epcot. So yeah, but that's just that's been brewing in the head for a little bit when I think about Epcot. So had to throw it out there to my Disney people.
Whenever I think of Epcot, I always think of what could have been. What if Walt would have graced us with another 10 years? What could we have gotten?
Right.
Well, I've said this before too, where Epcot is not exactly what Walt wanted because he wanted like a literal community. Epcot was just kind of like their. I mean, they had the two park ideas, the World Showcase and the World of Tomorrow, and then that was going to be what kind of like the tribute to Walt, and then they put them both together to make one park, to make Epcot. But I mean, I've said before on the podcast that really the Epcot that Walt wanted kind of turned in, like Disney World in itself kind of turned into that, the way that they have their own authority to like kind of do whatever they want. And they just went in and just like amazing infrastructure and amazing transportation and so many forms of transportation. That's kind of what Epcot ended up becoming. Like Walt's idea of Epcot was really just all of Disney World. Dropping these bombs on you guys.
Disney truth bombs hit me right in the Disney feels. You brought up Walt. I miss him so much.
Speaking of that, we have if you scroll back into a bunch of our episodes, we actually went to Marceline at one point and visited where Walt grew up in kind of like his formative years. So that was a lot of fun. So yeah, it's just anytime you can bring up Walt himself and talk about the things that he loved and what he did for the company is always great.
Absolutely. I'm an East Coast guy, so Walt Disney World has always been my home park. It's been the one that we always went to as a family. It's the one I brought my kids to. But as I kind of got the podcast going here, and one of my sons is just a massive, massive Spider-Man fan, so for this past Christmas, my wife, for my present, she's like, I'm just getting you one thing, and I just want you to plan a one-on-one trip with Hunter, get some alone time with him, and take the trip, go out to California, get him to see Avengers Campus, and let him do the Spider-Man ride, and it'll be great for you guys to kind of have that one-on-one time together. Plus, she's like, with the podcast, you'll be able to talk about that on your show type of thing too. So it kind of worked on multiple different levels, and I was really kind of blown away from that experience going out to Disneyland, because I went into it thinking, okay, I've never been here before. I know this is the original one. I feel like if I had to guess, it's going to feel like old and like kind of outdated or a little bit more rundown. And like, to me, like it's never going to live up to what Walt Disney World is to me. And I couldn't have been more wrong. Like, I was blown away at how awesome that park was. And it was almost hard for me to kind of describe it, but like I really felt like walking around Disneyland and being around that castle, even though it feels a little bit like you're in Magic Kingdom, there's something special about that place with the Walt Disney himself kind of spirit or atmosphere. I don't know what like I said, I don't know how to kind of exactly put the wording to it, but like you just feel that Waltness in the air there that you don't feel in Walt Disney World. And I don't know if it's just because it's Walt Disney World is so big and so spread out, or what it is, but there's definitely something unique and something special when you're in Disneyland. You really feel that connection to Walt. I feel like even more when you're there walking around that park.
Yeah, I totally understand that. I was able to go to Disneyland once, and it was really just for an afternoon. I was actually there with the marching band that I taught at the time, and I just left the marching band and was like, I'm going to Disneyland. And this was during, I think we were there for the Rose Parade. So yeah, I only had an afternoon, but yeah, I felt the exact same way. You just, it's just all steeped in history, and it's this thing that I love in my life, and it's a big part of my life. And I was able to be there and experience all that stuff. And yeah, you can just feel the history. But also, speaking on how awesome that park is, this was kind of funny. I was like in line waiting to get into the park because, of course, I've got a rope drop Disneyland. And I'm standing in line and I'm looking at the park map, and I was like, wait, Galaxy's Edge? For some reason, I thought the Galaxy's Edge in California was in the other park. Yeah. And so I was like, that's awesome. Like I didn't even realize that was in Magic Kingdom.
Yeah, it's weird because there's you walking around Disneyland, you really do feel like you're in Magic Kingdom. But then, just like you said, you look down at the map and you're like, wait a minute, what? Galaxy's Edge is here? Like if I go past Splash Mountain, I get to go on Galaxy. I get to see Galaxy's Edge. It's so weird. Yeah,
it was a game changer for me because then I was like, oh, okay. Well, I guess I'm spending time in Galaxy's Edge today too.
Yeah. Yep.
So yeah, it's definitely not, and they're constantly plussing the park and like adding stuff. But it's really cool to have like the Matterhorn there and just like all of that old school stuff that and just kind of like the layout. I do feel like there are certain parts of the layout at Disneyland that I feel could have been brought to Disney World that like feel really cool. And so I appreciated that. And just thinking about like, oh my God, like this park was like so revolutionary for its time. And like there are so many other parks out there that like try to be this park. And this was like the first real theme park. And it's just kind of like mind blowing to think of like what Walt's visions were for stuff like that. So I thought it was crazy when I was there.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you know that where you're walking, Walt himself walked around and was doing the same thing that you were doing, walking around, taking it all in and looking at all the same stuff that you were. It's pretty cool.
I definitely spent some time in the like inside of the firehouse there, because his apartment like was like right above there, and you're able to like walk in, and that's also when I was there, that's where you could get the pins. So I got my like first time pin in there and everything. They just have them sitting there. I think in World, you actually have to go into like guest services and grab them. Although they have pins. I got my engagement pin, just like there were cast members like at like one of those stations, and they had pins there. So they have pins kind of everywhere. But I thought that was cool, and I was able to stand in the firehouse, and Walt's apartment was right above me, and it's just stuff like that you're able to kind of go and experience, and is really cool.
We're actually putting together a trip for February out there, and
awesome.
And I can't wait. Like everything you guys have been talking about, it's like I can't wait to get out there and hopefully experience all of that type of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm even looking at, like, my daughter's been bugging me about going to Hollywood so she can see the Hollywood sign and the Walk of Fame or whatever it is. And I'm like, okay, fine. If we're going to Hollywood, then we're going over by the Disney Studio and see, in Griffith Park, and we're having lunch at Tam O'Shanter, and like we have to go do all of that. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm hoping that all works out. But yeah.
Hopefully Brian is going to have somebody tagging along on that trip.
He keeps threatening that.
I keep threatening it. We just got to pull the trigger on it.
It's for the podcast.
Exactly.
It's for the
we
podcast.
Haven't really.
That's what I say to my wife all the time now, is when I try to plan another trip or do something, it's for the podcast. It's for the podcast.
The good thing is that the girl that I'm marrying is into it as well. Pretty much, probably as much as I am.
That helps.
So we're a Disney team, and we just spend way too much of our money on Disney. But we're a team, and it takes teamwork to spend this much money.
Yeah, absolutely. Teamwork makes the dream work.
Not DreamWorks, no.
So, if anyone else out there is wondering why we've got this Johnny J guy on the show, it's kind of because we took a beat down from you in the pod battle on Instagram.
Oh, yeah.
So I thought we'd be gracious losers and let you come out and, use your bragging rights as you've been given. So...
Yeah, I studied you guys for weeks. I came up with a game plan. I knew exactly where your weak points were. I reached out to my fan base. I was like, this is where we hit them, guys. We hit them right here.
Right in the cheese curds.
I think the downfall was that it was on Instagram. So,
our Instagram presence is not the best.
Yeah. I lucked out into it totally. Anyways, I when I saw the post go up, I had written to All Aboard Podcast and said, hey, listen, I'm clearly have no business even getting into this thing. I'm only 15 episodes, I think, in my show at the time. So I said, I'm literally just kind of giving you my name in case you're having trouble filling a spot, and like you just need one more show to kind of fill in that last 16 seed at the 11th hour or something like that. I said, but by all means, I'd rather you give the spot to all these guys that have been doing it for a lot longer than I have. And to his credit, he's like, no, man, you reached out, you want to get in and you want to play, by all means, man, you can have a spot. This is all about teamwork and just kind of getting the name out there for everybody, and it's all in good fun anyway. So if you want a spot, boom, I'll put you in. So I felt lucky and honored that I even got to be surrounded by names like you guys and a bunch of these other podcasts, and then been doing it so much longer than me. And like I said, I think I just lucked out. I just started the Instagram feed when I started the podcast, so it's only a few months into it really, and I don't have that much of a following anyways, but because that's like kind of the good thing about it too, is because it's been small, like everybody that's been following, I've had the chance and time to be able to interact with all of them, and message each other back and forth and have DMs back and forth, and they're commenting on my stuff and I'm commenting on their stuff. So it kind of a little bit of a perfect storm where, because I'm new, I have a close connection with kind of almost everybody that I'm on there with. So it just lucked out, I think.
That's awesome. Yeah, we definitely want to, and I think these pod battles have been cool because, I mean, look at this. It brought us together. And so I think we've also been kind of vocal on there, like talking about like making it more of like a family thing, where like we're all in this together. Like we love being on people's shows. We love having people on our show. And so we're just kind of all about like the family, and we just love like talking to like-minded people, like talking to people who are also into this. And so we're all about it. We're all about the family and like the unity and everything. So that's kind of what we're about. And we're also here in Wisconsin. So I mean, you're not exactly in Florida either. And so we're all pretty far away. So like anytime we can kind of interact with people who think the same as us and talk about the places that we'd like to be, it's always fun.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. That's another, excuse me, a reason why I kind of started up the podcast too, was my wife likes going to Disney, but she didn't have that, like that magic moment like I had where it just kind of jumped to another level for her. She's kind of still in that place where like she likes seeing the kids there having fun, but like she just doesn't have that next level connection to it. And same thing with like most of my friends or even my other family members and stuff. They're like, hey, I mean, nothing against Disney, I'll go, but it's not my go-to vacation, and they're not into it on the level that I am. So I'm kind of stuck, kind of like you guys. I'm on this island up here in New England. I'm like, I don't have anybody in my immediate circle that like gets it, like the way that I get it. So, hey, maybe if I start the show and try to get something going on Instagram, I can meet some other podcasters, meet some other Disney fans, and make some weird internet friends that like the same geeky stuff that I like.
So, Johnny, thank you again for gracing us with your presence and talking Disney with us. It's always a fun time. Why don't you let the people know where they can find you?
Absolutely. Well, the honor is all mine, guys. I appreciate you guys having me on. Thank you very much for opening up your doors and let me come play in the podcast space with you guys here. So my show is on kind of basic all the popular podcast apps right now: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcast, all those. You can just search the DMSW Podcast, like D for Disney, M for Marvel, SW for Star Wars. Or you can find me on Instagram at the DMSW Podcast, or you can send me an email, the DMSW Podcast @gmail.com.
Johnny, thanks for coming on. And guys, definitely go check out his show. He's doing a lot of great stuff over there. And as I've been asking you guys, please go out and share the show with anyone you know. You can find us at www.milesfrommaineST.com.
Yeah, but like we always say, some live close,
but others don't.
So let's talk about it. We'll see you next time on Miles from Main Street.